Hey guys, I'm Carlin Bursinko. I'm an analyst and independent journalist covering the radical revolutionary far left in America, and today I'm going to explain to you why, no, you can't just cut off Antifa's funding, because this is now the new talking point coming out of the right, is we're gonna get Antifa, we're gonna label them a domestic terrorist organization, we're gonna cut off their funding, we're gonna get them, we're gonna RICO them, all this stuff. Listen, I understand that a lot of you believe that you know where the funding of the far left comes from, because every once in a while there's a story that pops up that says such and such works for an organization that is funded by George Soros and that's it, or such and such works for an organization that's funded by USAID, and you think that that is where all the funding is coming from. I really do hate to burst your bubble. Antifa is not funded by George Soros. Antifa is not funded by USAID. Antifa is not funded by the CCP. There is no source of funding that you can cut off for Antifa specifically. We need to take a step back. There are a ton of different revolutionary groups on the far left. You've got the Party for Socialism and Liberation. That's the most popular one that you guys are talking about right now, because that one is legitimately funded by the CCP. That's very real. Now, that's the national organization. That's not the local chapters, right? Antifa is a completely separate group of people with a completely different set of beliefs. And guess what? Antifa hates the Party for Socialism and Liberation. They specifically call them the paid protesters, and they refuse to work with them because Antifa explicitly rejects the CCP. They reject Maoism, they reject Stalinism, all that. These are anarcho-communists. These are completely different belief systems. I know they're all on the left, but that doesn't mean they think the same way, and that doesn't mean they all work together. Antifa is funded by something called mutual aid. Mutual aid is how most funding on the left is done. Antifa is funded by things like small donations, people taking money out of their paycheck, putting it in, people donating items to whatever direct action they're doing. It is all small donations that are pretty much untraceable. Remember, Antifa also doesn't have official membership rolls. Most Antifa organizations aren't even called Antifa. But this idea that you can just go after George Soros or Alex Soros and that's going to cut off the funding for Antifa, that is absurd. You guys have got to understand, Antifa are violent militants. They are in a cult. This is their identity. And their identity basically would rather die than ever take money from George or Alex Soros. The Soros family funds progressive groups, not Antifa. Okay, USAID is also not funding Antifa. There's a story going around with this data Republican moron on Twitter, and please guys, please stop sending me data Republican stuff. I've looked at data Republican stuff, I've fact-checked data Republican stuff. Data Republican doesn't know what she's talking about, and she lies to the public all the time, and it's really shitty analysis, but it props up the right conservative narrative. Data Republican out there is screaming right now about the Armed Queer Resistance founder in Salt Lake City being connected with an organization that's funded by USAID or something. So here's how this works. They say, this person once got an award from an organization that's connected to USAID, and therefore they must be funded by USAID. That's not how it works. Just because someone got an award from an organization one time doesn't mean every organization that they're connected with is funded by USAID. Just because someone worked for an organization that once got a grant from another organization doesn't mean that person even had anything to do with that grant. So these are the lies that conservatives tell when it comes to the funding. And this is what I always hear. It's like, go after the money, go after the money, go after the money. You guys don't even know where the money comes from. You don't know. Most organizations on the radical revolutionary far left are funded in one of four ways. They are funded through dues, things that members pay to the organizations, like once a month. The DSA has $5 a month, $10 a month. The Revolutionary Communists of America have 1 day's wages per month in dues, and they get newspapers and stickers if they pay them, stuff like that. So that's membership dues. They're also funded by voluntary donations. Mutual aid is going to flow under voluntary donations. So people have money, $5, $10, $50, $100, whatever. They give it to the organization. It's all in small donations. It's usually always done in cash. It's usually untraceable, stuff like that. That's the other way it's done. A lot of organizations also publish books. Book publishing and radical revolutionary bookstores are huge on the far left. They exist all over the country. Just look up radical revolutionary bookstore in your town or in the city nearest you. Find the socialist bookstores that come up. They might also be labeled as collectives or stuff like that. But book publishing is huge on the left. They make millions and millions of dollars from book publishing alone. And going back to the membership dues thing, don't think that just because it's like $5 a month for membership dues, that's anything to sneeze at. The DSA in New York City is approaching 10,000 dues paying members. That's $50,000 a month that they're getting just in dues. So these organizations can actually raise a fair bit of money just from membership dues that their members are paying. The last way that these organizations fund what they're doing is they hold events and trainings, they sell merchandise. It's like conferences and things like that. They bring in speakers, they charge $15, stuff like that. So the point that I'm trying to make is you are not going to cut off Antifa's funding. You don't even know where the funding is coming from. It is absolutely not coming from George Soros or Alex Soros. It is not coming from USAID. It is not coming from the CCP. Antifa specifically, and they write about this, they talk about this all the time, specifically gets their money from mutual aid. And that mutual aid are in small donations that are pretty much untraceable. So good luck, guys. Good luck cutting that off. I think you're not going to be as successful at it as you think you are. And this is why we need to learn about the real far left, not the conservative bullshit talking points. We actually have to follow the real far left because it is much more nuanced than you probably understand. And by the way, if you're feeling a little salty right now because I told you one of the favorite conservative talking points is a lie, just remember, I'm not the one who told you that they were funded by the wrong people. I'm not the one who sold you the story that this was all funded by George Soros when it just provably is not being funded by Soros. I'm not the one that sold you the story that USAID was the one funding all these groups or any of these big organizations. I'm not the one that sold you the story that all the rioters were funded by the CCP. That was that data Republican shill on Twitter and Republican congressmen. So I'm very sorry your conservative influencers are bullshit con artists that don't know what they're talking about when it comes to the far left. It's not your fault, but you've got to stop listening to people who lie to you. Everything I do is based on primary source evidence. I'm telling you what the left says. When they think people like you aren't listening, behind closed doors at their conferences and their events, I was literally just undercover with Antifa 2 days ago. Do you know what I saw when I was undercover with Antifa? A whole bunch of stuff about mutual aid. They weren't talking about this. These were not big funded things. These were things that were funded by mutual aid, small donations that are untraceable. That is the main funding source on the left. So until people start hinging into reality, ain't nothing going to get done about no funding. So can we please, focus on things that matter? That's all I got, guys. I'll see you soon.